Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson, and it's Tuesday, which means it is Tactical Tuesday. I'm joined by my co-host, Jon. What up, sir? How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm dealing with sleep issue the last couple of days, so I feel I'm operating at 56% capacity or so right now.
Oh, we'll see if that affects your analysis of either of these hands.
Yeah, well, we shall see. And I guess there's only one way to find out, and we're through the small talk phase of Tactical Tuesday. We'll move into the place where you're most comfortable.
Opening the Queen 7 of Hearts.
Yeah, that's the ticket. That's the spot. So, break down the action for the listeners, the watchers, everybody consuming the Tactical Tuesday.
All right. So I guess before we break down the action or get into the action, the theme for this episode is going to be deciding or just trying to find the right size on the river with two types of hands. I think both of these hands I had questions about, like what the right river size was. So that's going to be a theme of this episode, and it's kind of going to be the question that I ask, or in my mind, the most burning question that I have about both of these hands for Brad is river sizing. So starting the cutoff, Queen 7 of Hearts, I open $25. Fish on the button calls the 25, and the big blind, who I think is a reg, also defends. So we go three ways to a flop. King 8 deuce, 2 hearts, I flop flush draw. I think honestly we could even just start talking about the flop. So generally I have like a really, really tight betting range multi-way when I'm out of position versus one or two players. That being said, I think this hand might just play better once you start with like a bet on the flop. I did not bet the flop. I just checked this hand.
Going back to your heuristic from last week of just like rarely betting multi-way pots here, especially when one of the players has position against you. I think that there's not a ton of concern about getting check raised from the big blind. Like, yeah, occasionally they'll have like a set of 8s or a set of deuces or like a king 8 or king deuce. But I think for the most part, like, you're not going to get check raised that often. And I do think the hand does play much better on future streets against the fish on the button if you start by betting the flop. Like you probably want to go 3 streets. Like they're one of the most natural call downs in this spot would be like king queen, and you block that. So like I don't mind betting the flop. I think checking is fine too. But in this specific spot where I just don't think the big blind is going to check raise at a super high frequency, especially like with you betting out 3 ways and the fish being involved. Like they're going to need some kind of equity driven hand to check raise you with. And I just don't think it's going to happen at a high enough frequency to, make that the reason for not betting. And then the other, the final part is like, what's the value of starting out with a bet on the flop versus the fish? And I think decent value there, but yeah, so in my mind, if you bet the flop, it can't be that bad.
Yeah, just to go back to like that, the check raise idea. It's like, I have a queen eye flush. Who cares if we get check raise? Like, I don't. That's fine. So like, yeah, even if it was like a high frequency check raise spot, or even if they only check raise like really, really strong hands, I think like my exact hand here just wouldn't care very much about getting check raised. It's just fine. Just click call and play the turn in the river.
Yeah, with position 2 against a reg.
Right.
So yeah, I think betting is like totally reasonable here. Just firing half pot and then sort of taking it as it comes after you bet the flop. But You did check. There's 80 in the pot. The fish on the button has 700. The reg has like 960 or so. Jon has them both covered. The turn is a tray of spades, and now the big blind checks once again. So I guess first data point that we gain here on the turn is that the reg and the big blind is now checked twice, which is significantly different than them just checking once, especially when their check on the flop is a pretty natural check to the pre-flop raiser. They're, ceding initiative on the turn, and now it's like pretty much a green light to go 2 streets, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really important important point that you made early on about like the second check is significantly more meaningful than the big blind's first check. Like the big blind, like you said, is completely expected to check the flop once they just call, and so like I don't think that caps them at all. I don't think we can really, infer much about the strength of their hand, but now we can certainly start making some pretty big assumptions about what types of hands he has or doesn't have in this spot. And so yeah, I mean, obviously I have, like you said, like one of the most like clear-cut bluffing candidates, I think, once both players check twice. Really happy to start putting money in the pot with this hand as a bluff. I think it's pretty unlikely that either player has a king. I think the big blind, especially if he's a better reg, can have like some weaker king X, but that's becoming more or less and less likely as this hand plays out.
And also you have like strong hands too when you check the flop, since you're checking with range. So like, right. You have like ace king and hands like that. So again, like we're like capped in that we probably don't have like middle set or bottom set, but we also have plenty of hands that we can defend with, and lots of like value hands that can bet the turn. So like, yeah, good spot to fire. And you fire, don't exactly know what this sizing is,
about
like
2/3.
60%.
Yeah,
you bet 50, 83. I think you could probably go bigger, honestly. Like polarize 70% on the turn to set up a big river bet. But yeah, is what it is. The button calls and the big blind folds. So now we're heads up versus the fish on the button. And I guess from here, like, what are your plans once the button calls your turn C bet?
So probably the case that occurs most frequently is that you get to the river, you get to a brick river with queen high. I think in that case, I would bet really, really big on the river. I think, again, my plan would be to try to fold out like, hands like 9s, 10s, and some like 8x. So I'd try to think of a size that would make those hands not want to call. I think on a river where I make a pair, so I river a queen or a 7, I'd be pretty happy to check call. And
a 7 seems like much closer to me than a queen.
You think you think I should just keep bluffing even after a 7?
Probably. I mean, you said you're targeting like 8x and pairs in between king and 8. So, I mean, it's quite hard for. I guess they do have like some 4s, 5s, ace deuce, ace tray, but I think a 7's just better served as a bluff than checking to realize showdown.
Okay.
But could be wrong. I mean, maybe they've got 4-5, maybe they've got like ace 4, ace 5, and they can bet. Like either way, like whether if you bet and turn it into a bluff, or if you check and bluff catch, I think both are probably just fine.
Yeah, I think I can pretty definitively say that in game my plan was to check and bluff catch if I somehow river a pair. And then I think like the last category of rivers to talk about is when we do improve to a flush. I think we can just save that for when it actually happens.
Because it does. Ta-da, you make a flush. So now you have a queen high flush. The river's a 5 of hearts. So, connects with ace 4, connects with 6-4, and gives like 4-5 a straight, or 5-6 some kind of straight here on the river. And now you're at a decision point. I think betting is just got to be the way to go. And it's just a matter of like what size you should choose here on the river.
Yep. So in game, I did go a really, really big size. I think I went like close to pot or like 90% pot. Um, I mean, I think as just a general poker heuristic, if when you have good hands versus fish, I think that just picking big sizes and trying to play big pots when you have like flushes and straights and all those types of strong hands versus fish, it's a reasonable guide. Just bet big and try to win big pots. That being said, I don't know if that like necessarily applies to this spot.
I mean, I think Villain doesn't have a large amount of strong hands to call you with. And the hands that they do, I think you would much rather bet small to get raised by like an ace-4 or a 6-4.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
because those hands
like,
always raise facing like a third or a quarter.
I'm not going to say always. I don't know that anybody always does anything, but I think they're way more likely to raise facing like a small bet than a big bet. And I also think like maybe 4-5 or 5-6 or like 7-8 or 8-9 or ace-8. Those hands can even find a crying call, and then maybe like some sort of ace-5 can raise the river, turn itself into a bluff. Like we can get 2 bets from both the best hands in Villain's range and then both the worst hands in Villain's range, which, and in both situations, like that's a clear win for us. The way that we lose in this spot is when Villain has a lot of hands that want to play for 1 bet, and we choose the small sizing over the big sizing. That's when it's bad.
Yep.
So I would say like, effectively when thinking about the spot is like, does Villain have a higher concentration of hands that want to play for like 1 bet, or 2 bets? And in this spot, I think the answer is 2 bets. So I would choose a small size.
How does that like logic work when like we think that they could get here with like lots of bluff catchers like 5x and like a hand like 7-8 that you said like might want to turn itself into a bluff facing the small size, like because those hands do want to play for 1 bet. Like I don't know, naturally I think it's like okay, those weak bluff catchers really do only want to play for 1 bet, but there is this like niche situation that we have over here where it's like, well, maybe those hands like do want to play for 2 bets if you put in a small size on the river.
I mean, I guess there maybe should be a differentiation between like 1 big bet and 1 small bet. Like I think like top pair wants to play for 1 big bet on the river. Mm-hmm. Like hands in that category.
All right.
All their king X. And so like for them to have top pair here, they need to first check the flop behind as a fish who tends to bet with top pair type hands, and not do a good job of like checking back some of their stronger hands so they can defend on later streets, which kind of gives credence to your plan of like bluffing big on the river on the turn, because they don't have a lot of hands that can call, right? You can put the hands they do have in quite a situation. So like banking off that logic, I just don't think that like their value range is like, or the good hands that they have are good enough to call a big bet that often, that I would rather, put some bait in the water and kind of see what happens from there.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's a high concentration of hands that want to play for 1 small bet is like
I think
the
so.
differentiating factor, right?
There's another thing that's in play too here, which is kind of, I mean, it's more of a long shot of happening, but like when Villain does have the nut flush and you bet small, like you do just call the raise. And I guess the flip side works too, where if Villain has a flush, and you bet big and they jam, then you get to play for stacks. But if you bet small and they raise, then like you don't get stacked when they do river the nut flush as well, which I think is like, it's a decent benefit, but maybe the downside outweighs the benefit, right? As I was talking, I kind of saw that of like, well, if that's true, then we also don't get the max value against like
the jack high flush.
The jack high flush when they have the jack high flush, right?
Yeah.
But one could also think like maybe they don't raise the jack high flush facing a big bet on the river.
Yeah.
Like maybe they just call with a 9 high flush. And I don't think that's like actually too crazy either.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So, anyway, I like a small bet here personally.
Okay. Yeah.
To get to the end of my thoughts.
You're talking about
here
and by small you mean like 1/3.
Yeah, something like that, 60-ish.
Yeah. Just one thing that I wanted to clarify that might have been confusing for listeners is like on turn I said that I would bet big on the river targeting like their bluff catchers like 8x, pocket 9s, pocket 10s, those sorts of hands that might call pre-flop and then check back the flop. And so like I think it's very reasonable to be confused, but like, well, if you were planning on bluffing like big, like why would you pick the big size with your value hands as well? And
because we need good hands in both spots, right? with the same size, we need to have some good hands.
No,
right?
no, not versus fish. Especially not versus fish, I guess I would say. But I think like one that's sort of a really common misconception in poker, and like we hear this in like Poker Power Hour and even like some of the Wolf like coaching sessions, but like there are lots of instances where the best value size also happens to be the best bluff size. We know that for sure from like some of our data analysis. But the real point that I wanted to add was that if I was bluffing this river, I would have gone bigger than this. So this is like not my big bluff size, even though it does look like a relative to the pot, it is a pretty big bet.
Yeah, you want their 8s to be like, okay, I just don't.
Like I'm out of here.
Yeah, I
don't want to deal with this.
I'm not gonna win. Too much.
Although that's what he said anyways, facing this. So maybe.
Yeah, I'm out of here. Villain does end up folding the river, and they have Queen 8. So, yeah, they folded facing the big bet. No idea. I mean, no idea if they fold facing the small bet. They could fold an 8. Although I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see if the second hand works out for you right after the break.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back to this episode of Tactical Tuesday, where we are looking at preferred river sizes. In our second hand of the day, we have the 8 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. We open 3x on the button at $30. The small blind folds the big blind, who I'm just going to assume is a reg.
Yep. Yes.
3 bets to 140 out of the big blind. Pretty big.
Yeah.
Pretty big 3 bet there, like a click up or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you defend with your 8-9 because that would be a very boring hand if you folded. And we get a flop of King of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds, 9 of Spades. There's 285 in the pot. Both players have 860 behind. And the 3-better bets a third on the flop here. I guess first decision point, bottom pair, backdoor flush draw, King, Queen, 9.
Not definitely not, super excited about putting this $92 in, but it is 1/3 pot, and there's just no universe where we're folding a pair in position facing a third on the flop. So hopefully
who is this person I'm talking to right now? There is a universe, actually, and that universe was like 1 year ago. We folded lots of pairs facing small bets.
I would never do that. That can never be me.
Yeah, I remember. I can't even remember what hand it was, but you got laughed at PPH.
Oh yeah,
for
yeah.
A solid 5 or 10 minutes. Peter was making fun of you.
Okay, I was out of position. I folded deuces on like King Queen 9 rainbow, and like apparently those are just like the most criminal thing anyone could do at a poker game is fold deuces on king queen nine out of position. Like, sorry.
Yeah. I think you're making that up. I don't think that was a spot. I think it was like a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw.
Oh, that was a different. No, it was a gut shot without a backdoor flush draw. Oh wait, anyway, that was a different hand.
Oh, I see.
And I was like,
yeah.
shouldn't we? Maybe we could just call it the ones.
So
with
you've gotten
backdoor
laughed
flush
out
draw.
of PPH multiple times for folding, facing a small bet on the flop.
I didn't
That's good,
actually
that's
fold.
good.
I just asked about the gut shot and the backdoor flush draw. The deuces, yes, I actually folded.
Yes, now I remember because the response was, John, contrary to popular belief, you can't ask stupid questions. Now it's all coming back to me. I remember it.
Yeah. See, that was me.
So you have bottom pair, backdoor flush draw, backdoor full house draw even. I mean, how can you fold?
Yeah.
You decide to defend, and the turn is a deuce of spades. So king, queen, nine, deuce. You have 8-9 suited with no spades, so still bottom pair. Villain checks. And again, not much of a decision here, right? Just checking back.
Yep, just gonna be checking back with what is now a little bit better of a bluff catcher. I think if the big blind had bet the turn, I'd certainly be folding. So I do feel a little bit better about my hand once the big blind checks.
Well, we're one step closer to making it to showdown.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
River's a 9, so pretty good river here. You river trips, and your opponent, of course, is going to bet pot with their weak hands, right? They're going to give you all the money, like just hand it over to you on a silver platter. Actually, no, they check. They check, and all of John's hopes and dreams go right down the tubes.
Oh. Now we have like kind of a fun problem though. It's like how do we get the most out of this guy? What sort of hands does he even have in his range when he bets the flop small and then checks twice?
You know what's interesting here is like I think in this spot they probably actually have more like top pair hands to bluff catch with than they did in the first hand. Like it's not totally unreasonable that like king jack, king 10, ace queen, even aces.
Yeah, right. It's
On the 9.
You're not
like
loving
ace
the king
king
queen 9 flop when you have.
Yeah. I think like all those hands could check the river that you could target with a big bet. Just an interesting aside. I don't think that necessarily sways the decision, and I think what you did is actually the best. Yeah, the best path, which you dusted off the old 1/3 ball here on the river. This is, by the way, something that you've tried periodically over time and had just, I want to say mixed results, but I think mix is like quite generous. I think just god awful results it would be
Like
a better.
getting snapped by aces when I do this.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, oh my god, the small bet on the river thing, I just can't do it.
Like, why don't I just target their bluff catchers for the max? Why am I like letting them off the hook by giving them this like easy size where they
this is I give this feedback in private coaching sessions, right? Like, which is it's like a weird thing where students, wolves, whoever will do a thing where they're like, well, normally I would raise here, but because I'm like making this video, I'm going to call because I think like, I think you want me to call, right? Which is like a weird thing to do,
like
especially
you, like Coach Brad wants me.
Yeah, right. Like, and then I watch it back and I'm like, no, you should have raised. Like, that's the right thing to do, right? And like, it's funny because like there's judgment no matter what you do. So you may as well just do the thing that you think is best. If you bet too big and like they snap fold, you feel bad. And if you bet small and they snap call with aces, then you feel bad. And so it's like, well, like there's always a downside here. Like there's no safe thing to do other than just doing exactly what you think you should do.
Yeah.
Which in this situation, you did what you thought you should do, which was bet small. And I'm a really big fan. This is well done.
It's because I wasn't making a video.
I would like to go into the repository of hands that you have in your database and see like how many times you tried out the 1/3 on the river and it failed disastrously. We have 30 fails and then this one masterpiece of a hand.
So these days that would look weird because like my 30s on the river are trying to induce raises so I can jam over them. And like, yes, some of those have ended in disasters, but these days I feel like I'm trying to accomplish something different most of the time when I bet small on the river.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get raised, but not because I want to call.
Most of your career, and like one thing that I love about coaching you and talking to you all the time is like you love experimenting, you love learning, and just testing out a bunch of different things. And so yeah, that's who knows what you'll be doing 6 months from now. I can hardly wait.
Oh, just Tactical Tuesday listeners will know. All the wacky stuff, it comes out here.
This is experimentation zone. So Villain jams the river, which is clearly what we wanted, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like we just win every single time here. I think, there are definitely some value hands that make sense to play this way. I think like pocket kings would probably be the most obvious one in my mind. So it's not like, oh, we just win every single time, but I think we do win a lot when we
win a lot for sure, right? Like, because I think Jack 10 is probably just going to bet the river for the most part, and they may just bet the turn as well, like not blocking any of the pairs, which is always like a benefit of having a straight. You don't block pairs when you have a straight.
I think pocket queens would probably find a bet too, thinking like let's just target some king X and
probably on the turn as well, right? Like queens probably doesn't check the turn a ton. Jack 10 probably doesn't check the turn a ton. Right. You beat king queen, you beat aces. So yeah, obviously you call the river with your 9. I mean, we can't place a bet out there that is intended to induce and then fold to the raise. Mm-hmm. And Villain has the 6 of hearts, 7 of hearts, which is a hand that, if my math serves me correctly, doesn't really make anything on this board. They just have a 6 and a 7. They maybe, this is what the cool kids say these days. They use the unblock word. 6, 7. It doesn't. How do they use it? What does it mean?
It unblocks spade draws.
Unblocks the. I don't know how they use it. It's. I tried it on to see how it felt, and it felt awful, and I don't want to use it anymore. All right, so yeah, that'll do it for this week's Tactical Tuesday. As for the podcast listener, by the way, the final board was King Queen 9, Deuce 9, no flush draw available. Our opponent has a 6, 7 of hearts, so just a total airball that they jammed with on the river. And also for the Tactical Tuesday listener, we are firing up the Wolves recruitment once again after spending some time, building out learning path and resolving some issues that came, after you listened to the Wolf podcast in December. We'll have a new Wolf podcast hopefully dropping in the next couple of weeks as well, sort of updating everybody on what's going on, but things are going quite well right now. So well, in fact, that it's made me a little sad, but I'll talk about that on on the Wolf episode of CPG.
Man, it was a tip to keep this guy happy.
Yeah, it's like I just, it's like you play a video game, right? And it's like fun and it's challenging, and then like you reach the end, and then you're like, well, now what do I do? Now what?
Finish your book or whatever.
Yeah, that's the feeling that I'm going through. But I'm sure maybe I'll be fully recovered by the time the Wolf podcast drops. Yeah, it must be nice being so uncomfortable, not having something so challenging that it causes you to lose sleep at night.
Things are going great. That's why I'm losing sleep. I'm just translating what you're saying for everybody else.
All right. I won't talk about it anymore. I have no support system in this. I like challenges. I like overcoming challenges. I like having things to focus my energy on. And yeah, there's still things to focus on and grow and build. And so it's not ready to take a nap on the job yet, but I do see the end in sight, and to this, at least, phase 1 of the Chasing Poker Greatness Wolf universe.
If you too would also like to join a group with no support system, cpgwolves.com.
Oh, that support system in Wolves is like ironclad. I can't, I can't imagine putting together a better support system than Wolves. Like genuinely and truly, the group of guys that are in there thus far are just ridiculously great people who just build each other up, and they all work, and like they take time out of their lives to help somebody if somebody's struggling. They're all interested in being their best self. I mean, they're a selfless group of guys who are extremely hardworking, and I got very, very lucky to be going through this whole process with them. So
yeah, I
exceptionally
totally
grateful.
agree with you. I think like every single one of the guys in Wolves so far like are people that I would happily hang out with, like outside of poker, like just I'd be friends with.
It's good.
Anyways, we should probably save this stuff for the Wolves pod. Probably.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. Just as like a teaser, just a teaser. cpgwolves.com if you're interested in applying. And that's all I got.
Cool. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.